Hey folks, it is your friendly host. I hope I'm friendly. I try to be. It is your friendly host, Cheryl Arkeson, with you today. We are live for week 46. I had to look at the quilt. For week 46 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. We are coming close to the end of our journey this year. It's been an adventure. I'm loving it. Let me tell you, this is what I need today. I need you folks. I need to play. And I have done something I haven't done in a long time. I've already made one of the blocks. So I've made one and we're gonna sew one together. I'm quite behind on my mostly monochromatic, the black one. And so I made that block today. So let's show you right away what the block looks like. I decided, actually, I'm going to show you the quilt itself. Hold on a second. Here is the quilt itself on the design wall. Just want to stay a little bit further back, and I'll move these chairs out of the way. There's our quilt on the design wall right now, and I was looking at it this morning as I was procrastinating from some other work that I had to do, actually. And I decided that here on the bottom, we needed a couple more simple blocks. This corner in particular, well, this row, and sort of as we've gotten down, we've gotten into a little bit more, not complex necessarily blocks, but blocks with a lot of pieces in there, little small pieces, a lot of different components. And I wanted to get back to some of these sort of simpler blocks that we have up here. I thought it would be a good kind of bookend on things. So that's where I went design-wise. That's where my brain was for things. So that's what we're going to do today. So let me bring you back over here and I'll show you what we've got going on today. Oops, there we go. So this is the block. Ooh, maybe not do that with the shadow behind it. There's our block. So we're doing a log cabin kind of variation. You could start with your colors in any order. I really wanted the rainbow order, but I decided to start dark because with my monochromatic ones, I have a lot of blocks that have this kind of gradation where I started with the white in the center. So I just switched that up, went out with the white. So that's what we're gonna do today. Let's get to it. It is a lot of starting and stopping as we go. So we want to be prepared for that. I'm just grabbing my trusty seam ruler so that we can get to it. So I will flip you around. We've got our table here. There's our ladies there. Behind my sewing machine it's getting a little messy, folks. I don't know about that. So I'm gonna have you here on the table. But I got my sewing machine, as always, on that side, and my iron on that side. But I won't show you all of the steps because the sewing is pretty straightforward. The pressing is very straightforward. What are we starting with? Now, here's a lesson that I learned years ago. If you want to make a diamond shape in a quilt block, you can't actually start with the square, right? There's that joke about diamond shreddies. I don't know if you remember that. We had a really good laugh in our house because my husband always says if something is new, he'll buy it, even if he doesn't want the product or anything, or it's just remarketed. As soon as you put new on it, he's in it. Ooh, my apologies. I forgot to turn off my notifications and I can't do that once I'm live. So you're going to hear them. So I am sorry about that. Yeah, so I was jokingly making a quilt block, thinking about that. And if you just take a square block and turn it on its side, it doesn't actually work like a diamond. You need to start with a diamond. So that's what I've done. I've cut out a diamond shape. What I did is I just took basically a square of fabric. I folded it in half and cut 2 angles. Because what happens, see if I turn it to be like a square, it's not, right? This is a greater than 90 degree and this is less than 90 degrees. That's what gives us our diamond shape. So make sure you start with a diamond. We have that, and then we're gonna just add logs all the way around. I'm gonna do mine in log cabin format, so 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go more of that courthouse steps, so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, so 1, 1, 1, like that. Maker's choice. Okay, I'm going log cabin. What you want to do when you add your pieces, because we have these kind of funny angles, you are going to add bigger than you need pieces so that when these get trimmed, you have the extra fabric behind it. So that's all you really have to remember. It'll become a little more obvious as we go how that looks. So as I said, it's a lot of starting and stopping. So have your little spiders ready, have your pressing station nearby. There's the first piece. And I like to make my log cabins. I sew it on and then I turn it counterclockwise so that I'm sewing on the next piece here. So I want to have some overlap again because of those angles, but I have more than I need. So I'm just going to trim off any of those extra little bits. That gets me my length. And then you see how I have this extra bit that's going to get caught in the seam allowances? You need to trim that off. Can you trim it off after you sew if you want? You can trim it off before you sew, as long as you trim it off. Doesn't really matter when. And as I go, I'm just pressing out towards the logs that I add on. Okay. Now my strips, here's a good example to show you of having the long enough pieces. See, if I sew this on like that, this strip actually wants to go there. So I end up with that little gap there. So I want to make sure I have enough overlap. So when this line gets extended, I have enough there. Again, a little bit on the bottom that I don't need. Just trimming off those little scraps. I will use them at some point somewhere. If you want to make sure that you don't flip your seam allowances, I'll show you a trick the next time. I'll move the camera for this last blue log. All right, so we're going around and around and around, right? There's this one. Again, I have a bit more than I need here. And I'll be 2 colors in. Okay, so here's a good lesson. See, I flipped my seam allowance here. Am I going to stop and redo that seam? Personally, no. It's not that big of a deal. But if you want to minimize the potential for that happening, that one I sewed with the new log on top. If you want to minimize that, sew it with the log on the bottom, and that way you can see these seam allowances as you go. See what I mean here? Right? I'm putting it in the machine like this, which means I'm able to make sure those seam allowances stay the direction that I want them to stay. Okay, I'm going to give that a good press, and then we're switching colors. Okay, so how do I know where to go next, right? Whenever we're doing a log cabin and you're always stuck about which one to go on, you look where they've got 2 seam allowances. And that's what I have here, right? There's none on that one. There's only 1 seam allowance there. one there, but this piece has two, which means I know I have to go there next. Or you can say this one has none, which means I need to go on the other side. Have this small piece, will it work? I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be just a little too short, because when I put this ruler on, I get a little gap up there, right? It's hard to see because it's green on green, but it's just not quite long enough. So it was worth a shot. I had the scrap there. It's okay, I got more. So I'm just going to make sure I'm long enough. You can use this for the next piece, right? You can also trim your diamond kind of so that you have none of these overhangs as you go. That's that sort of personal rhythm that you get with improv piecing. You know, you develop with yourself. And everybody will be a little bit different. So there, see, I flipped my seam allowance again. I didn't listen to my own advice, but am I going to lose sleep over it? No, I am not, but I will listen to my own advice the next time. So this is what I mean by trimming them off before, right? I just took my ruler, gave myself a nice straight edge here. So I know I need to put that one on. It's going to go like that. And oops, I flipped that without even thinking about it. So just want to double check where I am. Now I will listen to my advice and sew it this way. What is that adage? Do as I say, not as I do. It's a very parental thing to say. Again, I apologize. It's all the WhatsApp. Oops. Yeah, I'm going to go to the iron because I did that wrong. All the notifications are my WhatsApp groups for my daughter's sports team. That is how all the parents prefer to communicate, which means we hear a lot from them. Okay. Obviously that piece is not big enough, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to grab one of these. And I like to, I don't know, I change my routine or how I do it each time. I'm not going to get very far cutting with the seam roller. Whether I cut first or cut afterwards, you know. I like to do it a little bit different each time. I am one of those people that will, even if I were walking to the same destination every day, I would take a different route because I'd get bored. I never do the same walk day after day. I prefer to change it up every day. Same with driving, right? Taking my daughter to practices. I like to change up my route a little bit just for interest's sake. It's just kind of a weird quirk of mine. Okay, look at that. My last scrap is the right length. Yeah, I didn't really realize, but yeah, I totally do that. And one of the things that my children find absolutely chaotic, or as my teenage daughters who are dramatic because they're teenage daughters tell me, is psychotic. I think they might be reaching a little bit. I set my alarm for a different time every day. Every night I set it for a different time. It's all roughly at about the same time in the morning, but if I need to get, and related to that is if I need to get up at say 7, I set it for 6:58, 6:59, 7:01, 7:02, never for actually 7. And then change it every day. I'm not entirely sure what the psychology is around that, but it's what I do. Okay, look at that. We've got 3. Let's add yellow. So you can vary. You can see on my green, I have different widths of the strips. Totally fine. Have fun with that. Play with it. My yellow strips, oops, that's not the one I want to add on. My yellow strips that I'm adding now are a bit thicker, or wider, I guess we would say. And that's totally fine. Oh, so this is what I meant when I said you could trim kind of after each round. You can kind of turn this back into a diamond with no sort of, I'm just going to call them by this super technical term of flappy bits, right? So we're working with just a straight diamond shape. And there are a lot of folks for whom that sort of thing, you know, it's that bit of calm in the middle of the improv piecing. Totally makes sense. I get it. I absolutely get it. Okay, listening to my own advice and sewing with the log down. Now, I know probably none of you are doing that because this is just the Sewalong and it's the single block, but if you really love this block and say you wanted to make a bunch of them, you absolutely could chain piece these, right? Just make sure you're staying on the same log each time with them. This actually just gave me an idea for another log cabin variation of this rainbow. I might have to experiment. There we go. I can get another log there. So I'll sew that one. You could absolutely use scissors to make that little trim there too. Alrighty. So lots of starts and stops, but as long as you start out with the diamond, and then what you also have to do, remember as you're going, and I'm just going to show you here, is remember that you need to, whatever piece you add on has to cover over that sort of little angle bit, those corners. But let's say you did this, right? And you're a little bit short, right? So let's pretend this bit is sewn on and I look, oh, this side, there's this little bit missing. Here's some troubleshooting advice. Just trim that piece shorter to cover that corner and you would just trim off what's on the other side here. And it's a pretty easy fix. Because we're not doing this with sort of prescribed widths of strips, you absolutely have that flexibility to make changes like that on the fly. And in fact, you just may choose to make that kind of a change. Yeah, you may choose to make that change just because it's interesting and it changes up the look of your block. All right, last one on this diamond, on this particular color. Put that this way and sew this last one. And then we're going to have a little discussion. A pause in the process. let me press this, and then I'm going to do that thing where I turn it back into a diamond with no sort of flappy bits or tabs. Maybe we could call them tabs. It sounds a mite bit politer. Mite politer? I don't think that's even a word. A little bit more polite. How about that? You can have fun. You can actually change when you do this process. Change the angles a little bit, right? If I'm here, I could kind of make these little strip portions a little bit more wedge-like. They don't have to be absolutely parallel, right? Have some fun playing with the design. Okay. Now, at this point, what I want to do, right, I've only got 2 more colors left to add. I want to check what my height is here. Because the truth is, I don't want to do more sewing than necessary. And I know for these pastel versions of the blocks, I need the height of my block to be 10.5 inches. I'm actually at 12 inches. What this means is you can do sort of, for this, because I have 2 more colors to do, we're going to do 2 different things just to show you what your options are. So when I add my oranges now, I'm not going to bother adding full strips, right? Check your width too. Because it's a diamond, it won't be as big. I'm fairly close. So I do on the sides need to go all the way. But remember that whole thing about making sure you've covered up the points and stuff like that? I don't have to worry so much about that because we're going to be cutting this off anyways. So see what I mean a little bit more as we go. But essentially we're adding to the sides, but not worrying about the tips quite as much. Not saying we ignore them entirely. Just don't worry about them quite as much. In my case, the sides aren't quite as wide as I want them to be, which is why I will still kind of pay attention to the tips of my diamond on the side portions. So for example, the bottom of this strip that I just added on, that's one of the sides. So I'm going to make sure that this next portion I have covers that tip well, but I don't need to worry about it coming all the way here. So let's just change this angle just a little bit more for you to show you what I mean. Because I've got way more than I need lengthwise or height-wise, if I finish like this, I'm okay. You can continue to just go around and cut those pieces off and put them in your scrap bin. There's nothing wrong with that too. Right, if you want to save any potential confusion, which is fair. I get it. Absolutely. Okay. So here, this is exactly the point. Using that, right? If I put this piece here, you can see there's a little bit of a gap there. I'm okay because I know I have more than enough, right? Even if I just double check now, I'm more than 12 inches in length. So when I add this next piece, I'm just going to go like this. I don't even care that there's nothing there. Just about kind of maximizing the fabric that you have and not causing a lot of stress there with it. But if it's too confusing for you that way, I get it. It's kind of a weird explanation. Just continue to go all the way around and you'll trim off more, and that's no big deal. this last piece. The table's getting a little messy, but I have all these little scraps, which I will of course save. You know me. I might have to, at the end of all of this, take all of my crumbs and make one little crumb block with everything from this that's left. I've already decided that whatever's left, particularly for this version, whatever is left of all of these rainbow fabrics are going on the back, just so that they all stay together. Okay, so now I have to add this one on. Again, I am adding, this is a side corner, so let's double check my width now. Now, right, I'm more than what I need. So I'm going to go ahead and add this piece, and you can see, again, I'm not worried at the bottom or the top. Just going to go ahead and add that like this. Still do that trimming. And that will be, you know, as we get closer to the size of what we want, that's kind of the one way to deal with it. And then when we do this last color, we're going to do something a little bit different. Okay, here we are. Ooh, I love the way this looks. So now we have to add the last color onto here. We're going to do this one a little bit different, and here's why. Because when we add the last color, there's nothing stopping you from just adding strips around here. They're going to have to be really big strips though, unless you only have a little bit left to do. In my case, they would have to be big strips. So I'm getting to my 10.5 inch mark there. You know, I've got it down there. So I'd have to add really wide strips on these corners. Totally possible. With the caveat that then when you trim off the block, that's a lot of bias edge on the corners. Now as I have been, you may not be, but I have been assembling the blocks into the quilt top as I go, which means it's probably not a huge deal to have that bias edge because I'm going to deal with these quickly. They're not going to lay around. They're not going to be up and down off the design wall, moved constantly like that. So having that bias, as long as you're careful with it, isn't the end of the world. So don't stress if that's what you choose to do. There's no right or wrong. What I'm going to do though is give you an option that allows for a little bit of kind of squaring off and containing all that bias energy, right? I kind of like to think of bias edges as like a toddler that's a bit much, right? Sometimes you just gotta contain that energy a little bit. I'm just trimming that off because it was a little too much. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out 2 rectangles, and one of the rectangles is going to be sliced, and it will be this corner and this corner, and the other rectangle that I slice will become this corner and this corner. And I'm going to show you how that all works, but I want to make sure I cut a big enough rectangle. So all I'm concerned with here is the width, right? So if I'm going to be here, this fold in my fabric is a good indication. I need to be somewhere slightly on this side of the fold. And then lengthwise, I've got more than enough from this scrap of fabric. So I'm just going to go like that. That's going to be this corner and this corner. And I'm going to do the same idea on the bottom. Obviously, my length is more than enough. Width-wise, I want to cut around here. Now, you'll see I didn't even use the ruler to make the cut because it doesn't matter. We're going to be trimming a little bit afterwards. So we are containing the bias, but, you know, using that toddler analogy, we can't control them and everything. All we can do is guide them in the right direction or redirect their energy, right? So that's what we'll do. So I'm going to set aside the second one for now, and I've got my first one. You see, I'm placing it over my ruler just so I can again see, okay, I'm good size-wise. I'm going to slide my ruler away temporarily, and you might be going, what am I going to do? How do I know? What do I have to do? I want to cut this, but what I want to do is actually now flip that. So I didn't move the pink at all. And I moved this, so now I can do that layered angle cut. We've done it many, many times in this sew along where we have two pieces, we layer them right sides up, and we cut through both. And that way we know the angles match perfectly. And this helps keep that piece kind of on grain. I'm not going to say it's 100% perfectly on grain, but it's kind of on grain. And then this piece, just leave it where it is for the moment. Don't get rid of it. I lined up my pieces. I just simply flipped the triangle back over. Back over my diamond. Right, I cut right sides up, sewed right sides together, and now I have that corner. And I'm going to do the opposite corner with this piece left over. Why is it that we do sort of the opposite corners this way? It's not that the angles are exactly the same, because they're not going to be, especially with this improv kind of work, but they're going to be in the right direction. So I'm minimizing my fabric waste here. So I have that, and this time now I'm just going to immediately go to place my pink triangle at the bottom, underneath. But I am going to use my ruler, double check where I am, right? If I go all the way here, I have way more length than I need. Still pretty good on width. So I could just go ahead and cut that angle, sew these on, and go for it, which is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to overthink this too much. Cut through both, just discard what I don't need. And then I cut right sides up. Now I'm just going to flip this over and sew them right sides together. So see, that was what was left. It wasn't quite the same angle, right? Thicker on one side than the other. I think I may have just lost my bobbin. Bear with me. Let's see what happened. No, we're good. My machine just made a weird noise. Yeah, I have a bit of a nest. That's what I heard. I got a bit of a nest. But everything's sewed together fine, and frankly, I think that's going to get trimmed off, so I'm not going to worry about it. If it bothers you, you can go ahead and redo that seam. But I think that's going to get cut off anyways. Okay, so we have our two corners. Yay! Now we're going to repeat the process. It doesn't really matter what order, like whether you go top right, bottom left, or what, as long as you're doing opposite corners. Ooh, sorry. As long as you're doing opposite corners, it's fine. So I'm going to lay this right sides up, but before I cut, I'm just going to again put my ruler over. Where am I? More than enough up here. Maybe I'll just move this right so that pinks are kind of at similar heights. I'm giving myself wiggle room, right? Like with this, I'm at a little over 11 inches when I know I'm scoring up to 10.5, but I always prefer to have that wiggle room so that I can trim down later. So I'm going to go ahead and awkwardly cut this because it's at a very strange angle for me. I don't want to bump the camera again. So I cut right sides up, flipped it over, and I will sew right sides together. You can see I needed a bit of a smaller triangle there. And your triangles, when you do this, they could be small, right? It all depends on how big of a diamond shape you started with at the beginning and how wide your strips were or how narrow, right? You may end up with giant corners and that'd be fine too. If you have giant corners, you could go around with another round of your rainbow fabrics, right? You don't have to go just once like I did. You could go multiple times. Okay. Still kind of looks a hot mess until we finish it, but that's all right. Right, so now I'm going to go here, double check I'm where I want to be. Right, I'm going to give myself just a little bit more wiggle room and pull that out a little bit. And I'll move myself to make this cut. There we go. Don't need that piece. I'm just going to fold that over. And again, a little bit of a weird strip left. That one's got some usable fabric on it though. All right, last piece is sewn. All that's left is to square it up. I think I made this a little bit wonky, but we should be good. We'll find out. And if it is a bit too wonky, meaning not big enough, then, well, we'll make some changes. See where we're at. So I'm looking at this side of the block and I need to make sure I'm over there. If I go to this top line, I am just at 10.5 inches. So I'm okay, right? But let's say you ended up like this, where you have a bit of a gap here on the side in order to get your size to do it. You can do a couple of things. Because I have so much extra height, I can take this last triangle off. The angle will remain the same, and then I just shift up where I sew it so that this point, you know, is over here and it fills up more of that space and it is less fabric down here at the bottom, but I don't need that fabric at the bottom. It was my width that I needed it with. Or in my case, I can basically fudge that a little bit by sliding the ruler down. Right? So you can sort of make those choices. I'm kind of just okay. I can also rotate the ruler to get where I want, but I am going to make sure I've got enough there and enough there. And I do. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm just going to shift you so I don't have to cut around. Right, so there's my two sides. I'm right-handed, so I always go up and across, and I'm going to flip that around so that that cut corners in the bottom here. Make sure I'm lined up where I want to be, and then I'm going to go ahead and make this cut. Now, actually, before I make that last cut, so see where I'm going to cut? It's going to end up cutting in the yellow, and here I'm in the orange. Does that bother me? Don't know. I'm going to slide this up and see what happens if I kind of adjust where I am. I think I am. I want to adjust it so that I'm in the yellow on both. top and bottom. So it means I'm gonna have to recut this bottom side, which is fine. Like I said, I had a lot of extra length. So you can play around with where that comes out for you. Okay, it's kind of fun to be able to make design decisions with just trimming up. Right, and there we have our block. So I'm gonna bring you up. We'll say goodbye to the ladies. Me very close. Hello. And we'll go put this block on the design wall. I didn't turn on the overhead lights in here today. How was it? Let me know. Because I just like the natural light better. Just a personal preference on my part. But I think the colors are coming across well. And I'm going to go ahead and put this last block on the wall so we can see what she looks like with everything else. Oops. There we go. Ta-da! There we have block 46. Mindy, you say the lighting is good today. Thank you. Okay. It is sunny out, so that helps. And it's winter sun, which means we're already getting towards the end of the day. So the sun is lower in the sky for me. So good to know. I know I'm crooked here. I can see that. But there we have. I'm going to back up so we can see a little bit more and adjust that. That's block 46 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sew-Along for 2024. I like that block. It's fitting in with a little bit more of simplicity with things. And look at that. There's only 3 blocks left. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I'm excited, but I also can't believe it. I feel extraordinary pressure to have these last 3 blocks be really cool and really interesting, but sometimes simple is what you needed, which was the case today. So I'm glad we went with that in there, and I'll think about what we do next time and have it coordinate with that. I'm gonna turn you around again so that I can say goodbye. Thanks, folks. This has been lovely. I was having a moment before this started and I've calmed down just being with you. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you showing up today or any day and having fun playing. It is my pleasure to lead you on this adventure and always my pleasure to have you join me. Take care, everybody. Have yourself a wonderful week. Bye-bye.